The sun was still hiding behind Ramadi's eastern skyline when the world exploded into chaos. It was 0547 hours, and 145 Marines from 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines were already living their worst nightmare. The coordinated insurgent ambush had come fast and brutal, tearing through their pre-dawn patrol like a meat grinder. RPG fire had reduced their lead vehicles to twisted metal and flame. The rear convoy wasn't faring any better. Now, they were trapped in a kill zone, surrounded on 3 sides, with wounded men screaming and squad leaders desperately shouting coordinates into radios that crackled with static and bad news. The quick reaction force was 40 minutes out. 40 minutes might as well have been 40 years. Communications were barely holding together. Every second that ticked by, the insurgents tightened their grip, and in less than 10 minutes, the sun would crest the horizon and expose every Marine position to enemy fire. They were pinned down behind rubble and burned-out cars, returning fire blindly, trying to stay alive long enough for help that might not arrive in time. 200 meters away, in the third-story window of what used to be a school building, Staff Sergeant Avachan was setting up her state Route 25 rifle with movements so practiced they looked like meditation. The ghillie knitting draped across her shoulders made her almost invisible against the broken concrete and rebar. No radio chatter, no backup, no safety net. Just her weapon, and the cold mathematics of angles and distances that would decide whether 145 Marines went home or went into body bags. She pressed her eye to the scope, took one controlled breath, and watched the sun begin to break the horizon. Below her position, the insurgents began their coordinated push toward the trapped Marines. The real fight was about to begin. 3 days earlier, the combat outpost had been quieter. SSGD Chun had arrived with her rifle case and deployment bag, an augment sniper attached from Camp Fallujah to provide overwatch for urban patrols. The operations briefing room went silent when she walked in. Not the good kind of silent. The kind where eyes shift sideways and assumptions start forming before anyone says a word. The Marines of February 5th didn't know her. Most of them didn't want to. She was an outsider in a tight-knit unit. And worse than that, she was a woman in a world that still wasn't sure women belonged. The company gunny introduced her with the bare minimum of enthusiasm. A lance corporal named Vickers, sitting in the back row with his boots up on a chair, made a joke just loud enough for the room to hear about admin sending them a diversity hire. A few Marines laughed. Most just stared. The gunny didn't shut it down hard enough. Just gave a half-hearted look that said more about what he wouldn't say than what he would. Chin didn't react. She nodded once to the commanding officer, grabbed her assigned corner in the plywood hooch that passed for living quarters, and started unpacking her gear. What they didn't know, what they couldn't see just by looking at her, was who she really was. Third-generation Marine. Grew up in Wyoming hunting elk and antelope with her father from the time she could hold a rifle steady. Graduate of the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, one of only a handful of women to earn that title at the time. 2 prior deployments. Expert rifleman qualification that most infantry Marines would never come close to touching. But here, in this room, on this base, she was just a female POG, person other than Grunt, who probably got pushed through because of politics or quotas or whatever story made them feel better about their own assumptions. The small indignities started immediately. She'd show up for patrol briefs, and find the time had been changed without anyone telling her. Her gear would get moved, misplaced, accidentally kicked aside. Vickers and his crew would sit near the chow tent and make loud comments about whether she'd ever made a shot past 300 meters or if her whole file was just paperwork and photo ops for recruitment posters. Chin didn't argue, didn't defend herself. She just cleaned her rifle with the kind of attention to detail that spoke of thousands of hours of practice, checked her dope book, the data on previous engagements that snipers live and die by, and said almost nothing to anyone. Over the next 2 days, she ran overwatch for 3 patrols through Ramadi's contested neighborhoods. The city was a maze of tight alleys, rooftops that could hide a dozen shooters, and civilians mixed in with insurgents in ways that made every decision potentially lethal. Chin did her job. She watched. She called in what she saw, and she learned very quickly that no one was particularly interested in listening. The first incident came during a daytime patrol through the Eastern District. Chen was posted on a rooftop 400 meters from the patrol route when she spotted 3 military-aged males setting up in a building with clear sight lines to where the Marines would be passing in 10 minutes. The movements were wrong. The positioning was wrong. Everything about it screamed ambush. She radioed it in with calm precision, gave the grid coordinates, described what she was seeing. The patrol leader, a green lieutenant on his first deployment, came back with a dismissive tone. Probable civilian activity. Not enough to justify investigation. The patrol kept moving. Chen logged it in her book, but didn't push. She knew the culture. Knew when pushing back would just make her the problem instead of the warning being the solution. That evening, Vickers found her near the chow tent. He was surrounded by his usual crew, feeling bold, feeling like the audience gave him permission to be crueler than he'd be alone. He made a crude comment about whether she'd ever actually shot anyone or just shot photos for the recruitment posters. The other Marines laughed, right on cue. Chen stopped walking. She turned and looked him dead in the eye with the kind of stare that doesn't blink, doesn't waver, doesn't give an inch. She said 3 words, "I don't miss." Then she walked away. Vickers called after her, mocking, called her Ice Queen, said she was all talk, no proof, just another paper Marine who'd fold the first time things got real. His friends laughed harder, but one older staff sergeant standing near the edge of the group didn't laugh at all. His name was Kowalski, a logistics NCO who'd served in Fallujah back in 2004 during the worst of the house-to-house fighting. He'd been watching Chen differently than the others. He noticed things they missed. The way she read wind direction by watching a single blade of grass. Her instant range estimations when someone casually pointed at a distant building. The faded hog's tooth hanging from her gear, a symbol only given to graduates of Scout Sniper School. Kowalski didn't say anything out loud, but he knew, and he waited. The company was preparing for a major dawn patrol into a known insurgent zone. Intelligence suggested the area was being used as a staging ground, and command wanted eyes on it before launching a larger operation. It was the kind of mission that sounded simple in the briefing room and turned complicated the second boots hit the ground. Chen was assigned solo overwatch from an old-school building that had a clear view of the primary exfiltration route. She'd specifically requested that position. Nobody asked why. Nobody cared enough to wonder if she saw something in the terrain they didn't. At 0530 hours, the patrol stepped off. 145 Marines moving through narrow streets in the pre-dawn darkness, their night vision turning the world into shades of green and shadow. Chen was already in position, alone in her perch, scanning sectors and running calculations in her head. The insurgents had been watching for weeks. They knew the patrol routes. They knew the timing. And at 0545 hours, just as the Marines reached their objective building, everything went to hell. The IEDs went off simultaneously. Lead vehicle, rear vehicle, both transformed into fireballs and shrapnel in the span of 2 heartbeats. The Marines were instantly trapped in a kill zone. Small arms fire erupted from rooftops, from windows, from alleyways. A textbook L-shaped ambush executed with the kind of precision that spoke of training and planning. The Marines scrambled for cover, returning fire, trying to organize a defense while rounds snapped through the air and ricocheted off stone walls. The company commander took a round in the first 30 seconds. Non-fatal, but he was out of the fight, bleeding and being dragged behind cover. The senior lieutenant, Rains, took command. His voice on the radio was tight, but controlled. He called for QRF, called for air support, and got answers he didn't want to hear. QRF was 40-plus minutes out. Air assets were grounded because a sandstorm was rolling in from the west, visibility dropping, conditions too dangerous for close air support. They were on their own. Radio chatter turned frantic. Casualties were mounting. Wounded Marines were screaming for corpsmen. Squad leaders were trying to maintain fire discipline, while insurgent rounds turned their defensive positions into dust and flying concrete. From her position, 200 meters away, Chun could see what the pinned Marines couldn't. She had the high ground, the angle, the perspective. 4 PCAM machine gun positions controlling key approaches. two RPG teams maneuvering for shots that would devastate the Marine positions. Approximately 30 to 40 insurgents moving to flank from the north, trying to get behind the Marines and finish this quickly. She keyed her radio. Her voice was calm, almost flat. All positions, this is Overwatch. I have eyes on multiple targets. Engaging. The response from below was mixed. Some Marines felt a surge of relief. Any help was good help. Others felt doubt. Vickers, bleeding from shrapnel wounds and pressed against a bullet-pocked wall, actually laughed. It was bitter, angry, disbelieving. He muttered to the Marine next to him, "Great, we're saved by the diversity hire." Then he went back to shooting blind around the corner, hoping to hit something, anything. Chun settled into her firing position. She conducted a final scope zero check. Adjusted for the wind, she could see moving dust across the rooftops, factored in the heat mirage that would start building as soon as the sun fully rose, and began her work. What happened over the next 4 hours wasn't Hollywood heroics. It was mathematics and breathing and the kind of muscle memory that comes from 10,000 hours of practice. First shot, PKM gunner at 520 meters, the one controlling the northern approach and tearing apart the Marines' left flank. Chen's round took him in the upper chest. He dropped. The machine gun went silent. Second shot, RPG team leader preparing to fire directly into the largest concentration of Marines. Eliminated before he could pull the trigger. Third shot, insurgent commander coordinating the assault via radio from a minaret 680 meters away. Neutralized. The insurgents' coordinated attack started fracturing into confused individual actions. Each shot wasn't random. It was deliberate, calculated geometry. She read wind off laundry lines hanging between buildings. Compensated for heat mirage starting to shimmer off the pavement. Accounted for her elevated position and the downward angle affecting her bullet's trajectory. Below, the Marines began to notice. The machine gun fire that had been shredding their position suddenly stopped. The RPG team that was about to end them collapsed mid-movement. A squad leader radioed up, voice tight with confusion and hope. "Overwatch, confirm those were your shots?" Chen's reply was calm, factual, almost boring in its precision. Confirmed. 12 targets engaged, 12 eliminated. Adjusting to Eastern Sector, the insurgents realized they had a serious problem. Someone was systematically dismantling their ambush from a position they couldn't see. They started trying to locate and suppress her. Chun shifted positions within the building 3 times, moving between windows, never staying static, never giving them a predictable target. She kept working. A spotter here, directing fire onto the Marines. Eliminated. A flanking element there, trying to circle behind. Stop cold. Her ammunition was running low. She started being even more selective, taking only the shots that would directly save lives. An insurgent team got within 50 meters of the Marine position, close enough that their grenades would be devastating. Chun made an 820-meter headshot through a window gap no wider than a dinner plate. The lead insurgent dropped. The others scattered. The Marines held. For 4 hours, she was their lifeline. The invisible guardian they couldn't see but could feel in every threat that suddenly disappeared, every attack that fell apart before it reached them. At 0945 hours, the QRF finally arrived with armored support. The sound of heavy weapons and fresh Marines pouring into the fight broke the back of the ambush. The insurgents melted away into the city. The Marines began their fighting withdrawal, moving their wounded, accounting for their people, trying to process what had just happened. Lieutenant Rains, now in command and running on adrenaline and 3 hours of pure survival, keyed his radio. "Who the hell is Overwatch?" There was a pause. Then Kowalski's voice came through, quiet but clear enough for half the platoon to hear. "That's Staff Sergeant Chun, sir. Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, honor graduate, 2003. She has 38 confirmed kills from Fallujah." That number just went way up. The silence that followed wasn't just radio silence. It was the sound of assumptions dying hard deaths. Chun, covered in dust and sweat, finally came down from her position as medevac birds arrived. She looked exhausted, professional. unbothered by glory. She slung her rifle and started walking back toward the combat outpost. Back at the COC, Chin quietly submitted her after-action report and requested ammunition resupply. No speeches, no moment of triumph, just paperwork and professional responsibility. Vickers found her in the staging area, his arm bandaged, his face pale. For the first time since she'd arrived, he couldn't meet her eyes. He stood there, opened his mouth like he was going to say something, an apology, maybe, or an acknowledgement, but the words didn't come. Chin just nodded once and walked past him. There wasn't anger in the gesture, just acceptance, just moving forward. The company commander, recovering from his wounds, learned the full scope later that day. 27 confirmed kills during the 4-hour engagement. 3 of them were high-value insurgent leaders intelligence had been tracking for months. He recommended her for a Bronze Star with Valor. When the S2 officer asked Chun if she wanted to make a statement for the record, she declined. All she said was, "I did my job. That's what Marines do." The story spread through the battalion anyway. Not because Chun told it, but because 145 Marines went home alive when they shouldn't have. Word travels fast in those circumstances. Respect started replacing ridicule, but it was quiet respect, the kind that shows up in nods and gestures rather than words. Vickers stopped talking. Just stopped. His crew didn't make jokes anymore. But Chin didn't change. The next morning, she was back on Overwatch, scanning the horizon, alone again. The recognition didn't matter to her the way it might matter to others. She'd never been doing this for applause. She'd been doing it because when you're the person in position to save lives, you save them. Period. No debate. No hesitation. The script could close here with a reflection that would resonate with anyone who's ever been underestimated, dismissed, or judged before they had a chance to prove who they really were. The invisible professionals. The ones who don't seek glory. The ones who endure disrespect and doubt and still show up when it matters most, because the mission isn't about ego. It's about the people depending on you. The final image would be simple. Chun back in that window, rifle steady, eyes scanning, alone, but never really alone because somewhere below her, Marines are moving through dangerous ground a little safer because she's watching. The final line would hit like a hammer. Respect isn't given for what you prove. It's owed for what you carry and what you're willing to give when no one's watching.